Hello, my name is Richard, and today we're going to talk about maybe my favorite thing ever, horror movies, or just scary stuff, I guess in general. So if you know me personally, or if you follow me on Twitter, or if you read the book that I wrote, you know that I love horror movies. I like talking about them, I like thinking about them, I like tearing them apart. I like enjoying bad ones, I like hating good ones. It's basically my whole life at this point. And not that I'm really cool or famous or anything, but people do ask, like, how do you get into horror movies? Some people don't grow up with them, some people don't really have an urge, some people just assume they'll be afraid of everything. So I just kind of wanted to talk about how I got into my favorite thing, which in this case is horror movies. This mic's not plugged in, I keep gesturing as by mistake. It's fine, who cares? And for the first step of the story, this isn't really going to go in any great order, but for the first step, I have to bring you back to an ancient time that is only known as the mid to late 90s. And I was just a little guy, you know, a handsome little kid. But when I was a small baby child, I had a babysitter whose name I don't remember, who we're going to call Dunkus. And Dunkus, I guess, was going through old Mama Richard's VHS collection. We had VHSs back then, isn't that crazy? And she picked out a horror movie known as The Craft. Now, I was born in 1993, so even at the oldest, even if she had watched it in the year 2000, I would have been 7. And now, I don't think The Craft is that scary. It's just witches, fucking whatever. But as a little baby child, it got me. It had like snakes and levitating and like bodily horror, and that messed me up. So that was kind of being shoved into the room with horror movies, and someone locked the door. Not a great first experience. And I don't think that is necessarily relatable. I don't think everyone's first experience with horror is being kind of thrust into it. But my next story is a little more relatable, because the first movie that really scared me, besides being a baby watching this horror movie, but the first movie to fill me with dread, like I couldn't sleep at night, was a movie that we all were terrified by, and that's Ernest Scared Stupid. There's a part in that movie where a little boy is facing one way, and he turns over, there's a fucking ghoul! There's a fucking ghoul on the other side of him! He thinks it's his friend, or maybe he thinks, I don't remember, but there's a fucking ghoul. It scared the shit out of me. I'm a grown man now. Thinking back, it gives me the fucking wigglies. I don't like it. Not a fan. But looping back to the VHS and the VCR sort of thing, a good portion of my childhood was sneaking over to my mom's VHSs, pulling one out and watching them. It's how I watched a bunch of movies that I don't think were very good, and a bunch of movies I don't think I was supposed to see. So my mom had a plethora of VHSs growing up, and a lot of them were horror, and I never really thought anything of it. But even into like the DVD age, she bought a lot of horror stuff, and I asked her about it. And one time she told me that if she watched a movie and it scared her, if she bought it, it wouldn't scare her anymore, which is, I mean, sound enough logic, right? So growing up, there'd be VHSs and movies still in like the wrapper. And my mom would be like, oh, that spooked me as a baby child, but not anymore. Now I'm an adult and I own it, I have money. That's what she would say. It was her catchphrase. So I'd spend a lot of time looking at these horror movies, and a lot of them, you know, spooky covers, but none of them really got me. However, my mother also owned the VHS box set for A Nightmare on Elm Street, and if you put it sideways with all the VHSs in there, it made a little Freddy Krueger boy. He was there, you saw him, and that didn't scare me at all. But on the back of one of the VHSs, it showed him consuming someone, and it was very unsettling. Again, small child. This is not recent. This wasn't me at like 17 being like, yo mom, I'm gonna steal a movie. What's this? Oh, a guy eating a lady. It's not good. I don't like it. So before I ever had like an actual experience with anything horror, I had all these like things in my head. I had Ernest Scared Stupid, I had The Craft as a little baby, and I had this scary picture on a box set, so I just assumed they were scary, right? You know, like, that's really it. But another experience I had with horror that really kind of changed it was I watched the entire box set of those Freddy Krueger movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Watched them one all the way, I think it was 6. I think there were 6 of them. And I watched them all, and I was like, hey, these are really not good. These are bad, these aren't scary, they're silly more than anything. They might have like a spooky part here and there, but for the most part, they're pretty silly. There's a part in the first one where he cuts off his own fingers. He's just like, hey, look at this. Why? Why did he do that? And, you know, I wasn't as much of a baby at the time. I was a little older, and I just was like, this is what scary movies are. This is them. This is what they are. And that was only cemented by horror movies I saw in my late kidhood, early teens, because those were the movies I was allowed to watch. the silly horror movies. So I'd be like hanging out with my friend and be like, Mom, can I watch Friday the 13th, Jason? And Mom would be like, yeah, that's fine, I don't care. Then I watch this goofy ass movie. I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's pretty silly. It's a little over the top. So I just assumed that's what it was. And there are some movies that I liked along the way, but for the most part, that was my only experience with it. That is until I went to college. Higher education, baby. You can't keep me out. I did not graduate. However, while I wasn't graduating or doing my homework, I would spend a lot of time on Netflix, because Netflix, I mean, it existed, obviously, but that's when I had, like, all the time to watch it, so I could really get down and dirty on it. And I Netflix, not a sponsor, but, like, it used to be really bad. Like, I know that's so mean to say, but it seems like the quality of movies they had on there has increased a lot. Their, like, exclusives are a lot different now. But back in the day, you'd have all sorts of nonsense. Some of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life were on there. We were watching Dracula 2000. We were watching Dracula 3000. I'm sure there's another Dracula movie. I hate Dracula, stupid. It's pretty good in that Castlevania show. And Gary Oldman in the book. And it was during this time of nonsense movies I was watching every day that I saw a movie that really changed my perspective on horror. It was The Exorcist. And although The Exorcist is, I think, comfortably older than anything else I've mentioned to this point, it really was the first time I saw horror handled like that. It was sincere. It was people being scared. Like for example, there's a part in it where the mom goes for help, right? And the guy's like, I can't help, but she's like, dude, hey, listen to me. Look me in the eyeballs here. I'm spooked. I'm scared. It's scary shit happening. I need your help. And at that point, it felt different. Like, that wasn't the sort of horror that I had grown up watching with, like, Friday the 13th or Freddy or any sort of Dracula. That was people treating it very real, like a real situation. And then you'd watch these movies where it'd be like, hey, I saw a ghoul or a goblin over there, and they'd be like, I don't believe it, ghouls or goblins. Oh no, a ghoul or a goblin. That was like this very, like, campy thing, which is fine. It's for the genre. But that was the first time it felt real. Like, these were genuine people having genuine things happen to them. Obviously, a little girl spewing pea soup out her mouth isn't super realistic, but it's part of the reaction to it seemed pretty real, because she'd be like, bleh, and then they'd be like, oh, well, that's surprising. And because The Exorcist was older, and it might have been something I dismiss for being old, it made me go back and kind of revisit those things. And and then I'm finding stuff like Halloween. I'm finding stuff like Alien, which Alien and Halloween to this day are some of my favorite movies of all time. And that's really what kicked off, I would call my phase 2 of being into horror. So then I felt like I stopped watching movies as like just some asshole kid, and I did it more as someone who was really trying to understand what it was. And I wasn't like a snarky critic who was like, oh, the cinematography is shitty. It's a shitty movie. Because you can learn stuff from bad movies just as easily as good movies. If a movie does everything right, there's less to take in than if a movie's making wrong turns the whole time, and then at one point it does something really, really well. That's a more interesting part than a movie that's great throughout. And it was at this point that I liked the idea of horror. It wasn't just horror movies, it wasn't cheesy movies. I really liked the concept of being afraid and what makes people afraid. So you get into other things, like I was playing these horror video games. I was going back in time and playing older ones that were considered scary at this point, and they were kind of silly. And then games that are from like 2008 and changed the genre, and you can still see those effects now. Hell, I got so into horror, I even read a book. And it's at that point you can really tear everything apart and look at two things and say, okay, this is really scary for this reason, but this is scary for an exact opposite reason, but it's still scary and it's still really good. Like, what the heck's going on with that? And eventually you get to the point where you kind of distance yourself from those things that are jumping out at you and scaring you, and it's just replaced with this dread. These movies that just make you feel all the way through and are actively making you uncomfortable from point A to point B, and then like before you have time to recover from that, fucking point C is put on top of that and spooking you again. The three-peat. And at this point, I gotta admit, I thought I was getting pretty cocky. I thought, hey, I understand these movies, I understand why I like them, I understand why I don't like them, I understand why this is good and why this isn't good, yada 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 yada. And then phase 3 of me liking horror movies is present day. It was kind of a revival of all that, and cemented what I already thought, and then just sort of introduced me to a bunch of different ways to think. And at this point, that's really where I took a step down from the pedestal of like, I know everything, I'm very smart, I know why this is good, and started reaching out to other people to see what they like, what they're afraid of, what they're not afraid of, and just kind of see how that affects it, because other people feel other stuff. It's a video in and of itself. Like, I had seen the classic Halloween. It's pretty good, but if it wasn't for other people, there's no fucking way I would have watched all of them. All, what, 9 at the time? H2O, I think, or Resurrection. But because I did that, I got really into some of them, really didn't like some other ones. But then when the new one came out, Halloween 2018, I watched the movie and I was like, really good is what I was said about it at the movie theater. Another example, I have a friend who said they wanted to stop being afraid of horror movies. And I said, we should watch good movies. And they said, no, 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 not going to do that. And I'm always happy to watch anything. But what it led to was stepping away from these movies I thought were great and I thought were scary, and led me to watch a bunch of things I never thought I'd ever see in my entire life. Example number the third, I have a friend has great opinions on movies, and they were like, have you ever seen the movie Slither? And I thought to myself, no, I've never seen Slither. Slither. And then right after that, I said out loud, no, I've never seen Slither. Watched it that night. Let me tell you, I would have never seen Slither in a million years if had it not been for that. And let me assure you what you've already been assuming this whole video. This video doesn't go anywhere. It's it. This is just me rambling about horror movies, and that's okay. You know what? That's okay. I just wanted to give a little bit more information about me, so when I start making videos about horror movies, which is it's inevitable, it's gonna happen. I am I'm inept. So when I start making videos about horror movies on this channel, nobody's surprised. Everyone's like, oh, I get it, right? Sure. Yeah, he rambled on about how much he likes horror movies forever, and now he's talking about the ones he likes. It seems like an obvious transition, right? It's a point A to point B situation. But in conclusion, if you like horror, stick around, because there's a ton more coming. And if there's something that spooked you in the past or your first experience with horror, I'd love to hear it. If you want to put that in the comments or message me on Twitter, I would love that. Who knows, maybe I'll find something I like, or I'll find something I hate, then I'll hold it against you personally. Anyway, thanks for sticking with me and my silly green screen rambles. Hopefully you laughed or learned something or got inspired that any idiot can make a video, because I'm any idiot, and I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Anyway, I'm Richard, signing off. This microphone is not plugged into anything.